This year has been a disappointing one for gamers. With the rise of the new console generation, not too horribly many games have had enough development time to be released this year. Granted, that didn't stop the more impatient of publishers from rushing out half-made trash, unconvincing cough, Ubisoft, unconvincing cough. But despite this setback, 2014 has been a wonderful year of surprises for those willing to dig around and find them. A lot of the best games this year caught me by surprise, and while there may have been comparatively few games released this year, some of the games that have been released are some of the best within recent memory. So, without further ado, this is my top 5 games of 2014. Number 5. Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is one of the increasingly few success stories of crowdfunding. Designed to a painstaking degree to evoke the best parts of retro platforming and combining them with newer design philosophies, Shovel Knight manages to be something comfortably familiar while staying refreshingly new. The visual style is reminiscent of platformers back in the 80s and early 90s, with bright and vibrant colors and various themed levels. The music is fun to listen to and catchy enough to hum, and the platforming is as solid as the best games of the time period. The level design is absolutely brilliant, encouraging exploration without feeling too expansive. Combine this with extremely tight controls and fun enemy designs, and Shovel Knight becomes easily one of the most challenging, but ultimately fun games I've played this year, and one of the best platformers ever made. Number 4. South Park: The Stick of Truth. South Park: The Stick of Truth surprised me, not because it was good or because it was well polished, which admittedly it is both of those things, but because it actually came out. Throughout the development of this title, the game went through numerous developers and publishers through a number of years, and many questioned if the game would even see the light of day, especially after the numerous delays. Thankfully, South Park: The Stick of Truth is now in my game library, and I can frankly couldn't be happier with the result. The usual warning applies to my recommendation. If you like South Park, you'll love the game. The style of the game mimics the style of the show to a T in both visuals and choice of comedy. Gameplay in this game looks exactly like the paper cutout look of the show, to the point that you could easily mistake a cutscene in the game to be a scene from the actual show. But what about the gameplay? You know, that one thing most licensed games screw up. Well, the combat system is reminiscent of the Mario and Luigi series, as it's turn-based, but the player can time attacks and parries to make them more effective, and this simple setup leads to some engaging and rewarding gameplay. I could sing the praises for this game all day if I needed to, but in the end it all boils down to this. If you like the show, you've probably already got the game, to be honest. If you're a fan of the style of humor that South Park brings to the table, you'll find a lot to like here, and even if you're not up to date with the show. If you're not a fan of the show, or you don't like the humor that it usually provides, you may wish to spend your money elsewhere. Otherwise, it's a fantastic game. Number 3. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. First impressions for Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor were shady, to say the least. Off the bat, it's a licensed game that tempers with the lore of a near-century-old novel that's worshipped by nerd culture to the point of obsession, so it immediately sets off a few red flags. On top of it, it appeared to mimic the combat style of the Batman Arkham games, which is something every action game and their dog has done to varying degrees of success. To put the crap-flavored cherry on top of the crap-flavored milkshake, the publishers had placed an embargo on reviews until the game was publicly released, unless the reviewer in question was willing to sign a paid promotion. A real shame as well, as Shadow of Mordor is an excellent game, worthy of the $60 price tag. The game's story and characters are as boring and generic as it gets, yes, but that's not why you're playing to begin with. The main gimmick of Shadow of Mordor is the Nemesis system, which dynamically creates rivalries between you and the many orcs of Mordor. The feeling of hatred you feel when a random orc kills you, taunts over your body in a fit of glory, earns a promotion, and gets a shiny new set of armor in celebration of your death, is a feeling of rage that compels you to keep playing, more than any dull backstory ever could. You feel a real sense of rivalry, and you end up going out of your way to more and more extreme lengths to get revenge on an orc who has killed you multiple times. That sense of satisfaction is worth the purchase price alone. But the main combat mechanics are also genuinely enjoyable on their own merits, blending Assassin's Creed stealth and Batman Arkham combat in a way that ends up turning out to be better than either of them alone. I've only scratched the surface of the Nemesis system, but on top of that, there's also a large suite of stealth mechanics and upgrades that you can unlock to keep you playing well after the story is finished. I highly recommend taking out Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Number 2. One Finger Death Punch. You're probably looking at this game with a questioning gaze about now, questioning whether or not this is some dumb joke or maybe a gag entry. I mean, come on, stick figures? Kung Fu? Was this year that bad for games? Well, right off the bat, we found the biggest problem with One Finger Death Punch. It's a game that looks like it could be made by a 12-year-old, and most don't even give it a chance due to this first impression. Which is, again, a shame, because One Finger Death Punch is easily one of the most satisfying, fun, rock-solid games I've ever played. The game is extremely simple. You control the game using only 2 buttons, in fact, the mouse buttons if you're on a PC and the X and B buttons on the Xbox 360. This simplicity makes the game extremely easy to pick up at almost any time and is one of the most unique things about this game. What this simple control scheme allows is a flawless, one-to-one combat system where every click of the mouse has a massive impact. You click left when an enemy gets too close to the left side of the screen, and vice versa for the right. Some enemies dodge, and some enemies have little fights attached to them, but the mechanics for taking these guys down still only use those 2 buttons. Attacking too early leaves you open to enemy attacks, so you have to nail the timing just right. So, why does this incredibly basic mechanic work? Well, there are lots of little touches that make every single click feel like it has this impact and a sense of kinetic movement that Kung Fu is known for. In a lot of ways, it's like a rhythm game, but instead of music, you're moving in tune with the flow of combat and a fury of punches and kicks, as the unapologetically epic music sets the soundtrack to your rampage. Enemies fly off the screen, crashing into obstacles and destroying the terrain. The unlockable skills allow you to freeze entire rows of enemies solid with your bare hands, or turn your character into nothing short of a god for a few seconds, as he brings a Kung Fu apocalypse unto the land. There's just the right amount of particle effects, flashy animations, enemy types, weapons, environmental collage, slow-mo, just all these things come together to bring a super satisfying, super challenging, and super fantastic experience. The carnage that you cause in this game just feels great in a way, and is easily one of the best ways that I relieved stress after a hard day in 2014. And just because it's simple, doesn't mean that this game lacks content, oh no. There are 3 separate difficulty settings, each drastically more difficult than the other, and the game dynamically speeds up and slows down in accordance to how well you play, ensuring a constant challenge without ever really being too much. The levels are varied and interesting with several different modes that, while yes, still use the same control scheme, change the way that you view each challenge. To top it all off, there are multiple types of survival modes to ensure that the content in this game never runs out. I've put over 70 hours into One Finger Death Punch in 2014, more than any other game this year by far, and I wouldn't be surprised to find myself playing it further into 2015 and many, many more years to come. Don't judge a book by its cover, do yourself a massive favor, buy this game, and thank me later. It's just that good. Number 1. Wolfenstein: The New Order. Bar none, one of the best first-person shooters I've played in a very long time, Wolfenstein: The New Order is a wonderful return to form. No arbitrary 2-weapon limit, no pace-breaking regenerating health bullcrap, no forced stealth sections or redundant side characters, just you, an arsenal of big guns that make loud noises, and an army of Nazis between you and the exit. While the modern generation of gamers would argue that this makes the game less cinematic or less realistic, what it really does is make the game fun and exciting. Remember that, fun that thing shooters used to be before the modern military shooter became the only thing this generation of games has become. When you're injured, you don't just sit behind a wall and suck your thumb for a few seconds until it's all better. You have to run and navigate the level to find a health pack under fire, and things are tense and exciting for a change. You can go through the level stealthing it up with a suite of silent weapons and knife-throwing abilities, or you can go in an automatic shotgun in each hand, lighting the place up in a rampage of fire and Third Reich blood. You know, like a fun video game. The levels are open-ended, encouraging exploration to find shortcuts and secrets. The weapons have a good kick to them, and every one of them can be dual-wielded. Yes, even the sniper rifles and the assault rifles. And the gameplay has a real vibe of making you feel like a badass warrior as you mow down Hitler's armies. However, while the New Order may have placed on this list because of these things alone, the real reason why it's number one, my game of 2014, is because it has all of that and a good story on top of it. The universe is densely packed with tiny details, and the characters, as deranged and violent as some of them may be, only feel like they're trying to survive in this cold and awful world. Even the badass main character feels grieved and emotionally exhausted from living in this alternate history where the Nazis won World War II and took over the world with superior technology. Oddly, the Wolfenstein series has never been very story-heavy. The original was the first real first-person shooter, after all, so seeing that name with a genuinely interesting story attached alongside the trademark over-the-top gameplay is strange. But overall, Wolfenstein: The New Order is a damn near perfect single-player first-person shooter, certainly the best I've played in a while, and the one game I could recommend to anybody in the year of 2014.